Welcome to AEC Stories. This is former SM-3 Dempsey of the USS Mount Hood. Today I've got a special guest for the second time because we were having such a great podcast that it got a little interrupted. There was some really juicy bits in there, and I figured, heck, let's do another one back to back with John W. Wood, the Marine. I think that's what I'm going to call this, is the Marine Part 2. And John is not just a Marine. He's also an author. He also owned a huge security company. He's done a lot of entrepreneurial great things. So how are you doing today, John?
I'm doing great, thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, you're becoming a regular podcaster.
Yes.
The ham radio of 2018.
Yeah, I had to look it up.
Yeah, well, it looks like you got the technology figured out. Did you find the headset okay over at Best Buy?
Well, every time I went to Best Buy, we ended up going somewhere else. We went to Best Buy and ended up adopting a dog next door. So we went to Walmart, and that's where I picked one up.
Oh, it works out. Well, these headsets are great, and I think we get more people podcasting, and I know that you want to do one with other fellow authors.
Yes.
So when you were a Marine, were you doing any writing back then?
No, I didn't. I did try a few times to write some things, but I didn't have the knowledge, and I didn't have the desire to stick with it. So no, I really didn't write back then.
That's interesting because here I am doing a podcast as I close in on 50 in May, and now I've got stories, right? How many stories would I have had at 21?
There you go. Well, some of us would have had a lot.
Well, I did. I mean, yeah, high school shenanigans would have been the name of my podcast. Things to do with your bike and a case of beer, whatever would have been the title.
Yeah.
And today's generation is a little more what to do with your cell phone for 24 hours a day. That's the new podcast they're putting out there. Yeah. But so you got into writing. You got a book that's it's selling a lot of copies. It's very high up there on the charts on Amazon. It's House of Crow. Now, I have yet to read it, but it looks like a Western. Is that what it is?
Well, it's classified more as a historical fiction.
Historical fiction? Okay.
Yeah. Because it has horses in it, everybody wants to make it a Western. But it starts out in 1816, but it ends up in the 1879 in the South China Sea fighting pirates. So it's kind of a faraway shot to call it an actual Western.
Well, that's pretty cool. So it actually jumps location. That's the kind of stuff I'm into. I like movies that make you travel. I used to like James Bond because he'd fight criminals all over the world. He never just stayed in Poughkeepsie or, he was going somewhere, right?
There you go.
So what gave you the idea for this book?
Well, it started about, been a long time now, 15 years ago. I was going through a real bad time in my life, and to keep my sanity, I sat down at the computer and I started doing a write-up on a guy on a train, riding on a train, just writing away, And the next thing I know, it was almost like the characters were telling me what to say and what to do. And it ended up into a book that it took me about a year to do the thing. And then I started writing the second book. But both of them were kind of short. I mean, they weren't too long. And they really kind of tied together well. And so I ended up putting them both together, tied it into one book, and came up with The House of Crow.
That's pretty cool. So you started writing, and then the story started evolving in your mind, and you started expanding upon it and so forth, right?
That's correct. Yes, I started doing research. I got interested in what I was writing about, and I started doing research. And the more research I did, the more it fed to the story.
I see.
And the story.
So this book, is there like a main character in this book? Who's like the main hero or?
Yes, the main character is Jedediah Crow. Jedediah Crow is the son of Isaiah Crow, who was the son of Brian Pringle, who was a fugitive from Ireland, wanted by the king's army for having killed 2 soldiers when they attacked him in Ireland. And he and his wife are talked into going to America, and they're headed out across the prairie, and a group of warriors from the Blackfoot tribe attack them and kill the family, but they miss the little boy, baby Brian, who's lying in the bottom of underneath his mother, who's been killed. And as they start to go into the wagon and attack, another war group comes up of Crow Indians, and they're deadly enemies. And the Crow attack the Blackfeet, and they kill him. They find the boy, and the Indian that finds him, he has lost his son, and so he scoops up the baby, and they take him and they raise him as their own.
And that was tradition back then, right? Like,
yes.
Well, I lost my son. Now you're going to be my son.
And that's correct.
Right?
And they like him because he's got those blue eyes, these magnificent blue eyes, which is a trait that's that passed down through the generations of the Crow family. And he's raised by the Indians, and he becomes a warrior. And one winter, a mountain man who's heard about this white Indian in the Crow tribe comes to winter there, and he meets White Crow, which is the name that they gave the baby, and they become friends. And the mountain man, who has his own troubles — I won't tell you the whole story, but he had his own troubles.
No, you don't want to. You don't want to give it all away. We want to kind of set the teaser here, right? But
he teaches him how to read and write, and the boy goes off with the mountain man, and then he goes with Jedediah Smith, who went into California. The mountain men went across the Mojave and so forth, and they went to California, and which was still belonged to Mexico at that time. And Isaiah falls in love and finds a bride there, and they have a son, Jedediah. And Jedediah grows up. He's trained by the Indians because of his father. Learns the warrior creed, and then the Civil War comes out, and he joins the Civil War, and then he comes back as a U.S. Marshal, and the story builds from there.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting premise. A lot of different change-ups, but that's great. So you've sold a lot of books on the internet. How'd you get into that?
Well, I tried to find a publisher, but that's like looking for hen's teeth. You know, people aren't really open to new authors, it seems like. And I found out that I could publish my book for free on CreateSpace with Amazon. So that's what I did. I made up my own cover, and I wrote it and put it in and edited it. Not very well, but I did edit it, and I got the book published. And it started gaining, because of friends and so forth, it started gaining some good reviews, and it got passed around for a while. And I kept pushing it on Facebook. And then finally, a lady in Australia, author in Australia, told me that her publisher was looking for new authors, and would I be interested? And I said yes. And so the Creativia, which is a publisher, they looked at my book and they took it on, and within like a week after it was published by them, and they started promoting it it went into the bestseller list, and it stayed there from June until now.
Wow. So that was just like a nice income source you weren't expecting.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Wow, that's a wonderful surprise, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I feel that way. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I feel that way with the podcast. I know I've got tremendous stories and very interesting people, and everything is history. Anything you do is history, right?
Yes.
And if you do it at a significant time and it has some value or some interest, it's a great story because people are doing less these days. So, people are being more checked into the electronic world, right?
Yeah.
Where when we were young, like I said, and I think on the other podcasts, like, you want to play? Here's a stick, here's a rock, go play by the train tracks, right? And you being a Marine, I'm sure that gave you some experience which added to your imagination, right?
Yes. Well, I've used just about everything from my past, things that I learned in the Marines. Almost every character in my books are people that I knew. I've met, and I just very lucky, fortunate to have met so many interesting people. And then my business in security also added to the pot, and so I was able to create different kinds of jobs and situations because of that.
Oh yeah, but I understand like what it's like to be an entrepreneur. You and I were both entrepreneurs getting out of the military. At first we try to take jobs, and then the jobs either fit people or they don't. We know guys that got out and they had a job and they retired with a pension, or they didn't, or they tried 3 or 4 different jobs, or they started a company and 1 out of 5 of those fails. And some of us are lucky that have something that gets really big. But in my case, mine blew up, and I'm guessing similar to you. We went through something where we had it all, and all of a sudden something happened. And, to see this book is like a second, coming, of greatness, like a thank you from the universe to you, right? It just brings you back.
Yes, absolutely. I really didn't think much would happen in my life, but I was very fortunate. I met a lady in Battle Creek, where I was kind of limping along in life, and we got together, and it clicked, and she encouraged me to work on my book and to get it published, and by golly, it worked. And I probably never would have happened if I hadn't met Mary.
So how surprised were you when it did work out?
I'm still surprised.
You're like, a book came out of my head and it sends me money. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
Is this like the new seminar, write a book and retire now with John W. Wood?
She's always saying, why do you think like that? You're successfully doing your book. Why? What's the matter? And I forget that it's actually working, that it's selling, and that people like it. But there's a part of me that is just doesn't believe it. Just doesn't believe that I actually did that. And it's cool.
You've owned businesses. You've owned businesses before, right?
That's correct.
And you've had big business too, so you know what it's like to succeed. But when that stops working or that journey ends, you don't feel like you're going to get another hit. It kind of feels like, well, I hit a home run at tryouts for the senior baseball team, and that'll never happen again.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is. Yes.
And I've been through it. I've been through it too. And now I live off of my VA benefits. Thank God for that. Thank you, VA. I'm not one of the angry ones. I just understand it. I've been to the top of the mountain and had everything. and I'm not putting any bragging out there or anything, but I had a lot. And, probably in the top 5%, 10% of earners in the country at one time. And then to living on a couch, to being hand to mouth, to driving a rusty $900 car after leaving my luxury car and my big fancy house in a gated community to, hey, can I sleep on your couch?
Yeah, exactly.
And I learned to be a very charming, entertaining guest. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. But I tell you,
if you get class,
when that,
go ahead.
When that happened to me, I was thank God for friends, real friends. And I had some real friends in Battle Creek where I was living. And, but I went over to where my mother was staying. She was in her 80s at that time. And I found her almost dead. And they were feeding her medicine that she didn't need and so forth. And so I started taking care of her, and she had to go to the hospital. And they said that she needed to go into a home because she needed full-time care. And I said, well, I'll do it. And they said, do you know what you're getting into? And I said, probably not, but I'll do it. And so that's where I was. I was camped on my mother's couch, And I was, I used to, I never thought I'd ever be there. I prided myself in not ever having to ask for help or anything from anybody. And there I was on her couch and taking care of her. And that's when, and she's a writer. She's been a writer all of her adult life, and a successful one. And
right,
sitting and talking with her in the evenings, and got my blood pumping. And that's when I started. She said, "Why don't you write? It'll take your mind off your troubles." And then one day I came in and handed her a novel. She says, "What's this?" I said, "That's my book." And she says, "You wrote a book?" She'd been trying to write her novel for 50 years, And in about 6 months, I had written one, and she read it, and she says, "My God, you even got a dog in it." So she helped me with it, and it never would have happened if I hadn't lost everything.
That's interesting, because when I went through tough times, I remember, California is very expensive, right?
Oh, yeah.
And high taxes, high cost of living. If either you try to have some savings left over, the tax man gets you.
Uh-huh.
You try to keep, you lose a job, you're stuck with a high lease on an apartment or a house or a mortgage payment or something.
Uh-huh.
And when you realize that there's no time to have second chances, like once you're floating in the middle.
Yeah.
So I went and lived with my mom for a bit. And that was hard because she wanted to be a mom and tell me how much I was doing bad or whatever. And I was like, Mom, I used to be pretty rich. I lost it all, but it doesn't mean I'm done for. But she's the one that made me go to the VA. Oh. So I went to the VA, and all of a sudden they're like, here. And boom, now it pretty much takes care of everything, right?
Right.
Which I never would have guessed, because I had too much pride because I'd been successful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you had a lot of pride because you'd been successful, and that's part of the book, the journey to the book, right? I'm breaking this down because this is the understory.
Yes.
And I know you relate to me, but I'm just saying, like, you would probably, you sound like such a stand-up guy. From what I can tell, I'm a pretty good judge of character. And I'm guessing that you took care of a lot of people, so there was people looking for you.
Yes.
That they were looking to help you out.
I don't know. I never asked.
Did you have any of your friends?
I just walked away from it.
Yeah, I meant like your friends were there for you after everything that you'd been through. That's what I was saying.
I had some friends, but I never, there was only a few friends from another time that I went to and asked for help. And I just, the other life I walked away from, and I was incredibly down. I guess you might say I was even ashamed of what had happened, And I just walked away, and then circumstances started picking up, and I ended up going to work at the Federal Center. 9/11 happened, and I was asked if I would go to work at the Federal Center, and I went there, and I was all down in the dumps. Here I am, a security guard, and I used to have them working for me, and a guy walked up to me and he said, "Mr. Wood," he says, "my gosh," he said, "it's good to see you." He says, "I want to thank you." He said, "I got my education because of you." And excuse me.
Wow.
And that because we used to pay the young fellows and young ladies that worked for us, if they got good grades, we paid their tuition for them, and at school, and they would bring their grades to us, and we'd see that they got paid, and he got his education and a good job because of it, and I happened to end up at the same place he was, and it started the healing process, you might say.
That's a pretty nice come around there. I've been through stuff like I looked out for people, right?
Yeah.
But when I crashed, nobody feels sorry for the strong horse.
No.
That's my saying. Doesn't that make sense? You get that metaphor right off the top?
Oh, yes, sir.
Right? Even with a broken leg, the strong horse can still pull more than the other horse. You know what I mean? So no one feels sorry. We're not used to people having pity on us,
No.
A little bit of that machismo and taste of success and worldly experience, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, crap. But what I like about this whole premise is the comeback. I'm not trying to dig up war wounds per se.
Uh-huh.
I'm more trying to illustrate the comeback, and that everybody could have another second, third, or fourth, or 20th chance, And I'm really impressed that you did that with your book. I think the Marine training probably taught you resilience, don't you think?
I think so, yes. The Marine Corps has been a lifesaver all my life. I've never regretted having been in the Corps. It was a good thing for me, and it changed my life for the good. And I'll always be grateful to the Corps.
It's interesting. I don't know if you had any of your friends come back, like the young gentleman who you got their education for them.
Uh-huh.
There was people that I trained in business, and the fact that we're doing this podcast on this very expensive computer, it was a gift from one of my former agents at my real estate brokerage.
Wow.
Because he got rich. So, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, thank you, my friend. Sure. Yeah, I did kind of teach you enough skills to get rich. Yeah, I did. So, yeah, I'll take the computer. I'm sure that guy offered you a triple promotion. You would have been okay. But
well, the thank you,
did the book come in?
Was enough. The thank you.
Right.
The thank you
was enough. But he walked to my house with a computer. I couldn't say no.
Oh, no, I understand completely. If I got on the computer, I've been happy too.
So the book came across. It was your second wind. It was like, before you wrote it, you were probably thinking, I'm just guessing, right? Speculation. Well, I'm just going to learn to live like this, right?
Right.
And then the book comes along and just changes everything, I bet.
Well, it's changed my life around, and I've met so many great people. Being retired, Mary and I do well together, and we enjoy each other's company. But you need to feel like you're doing something. You're accomplishing something with your life. And here I am. I was in the store today buying these these earphones and the microphone, and the fellow was checking me out, and he said, "Are you using this for Skype?" And I said, "No, I'm going to be interviewed tonight." He says, "Oh," and he misunderstood. And he said, "You're hiring some new people?" And I said, No, I'm being interviewed. I wrote a book." He says, "You wrote a book?" He's all excited. He said, "My wife's trying to write a book." He says, "She doesn't." He said, "How do you get it, so that you can keep it safe and everything?" And I said, so I started explaining to him about how he could get it done and how to get it published, and that she wouldn't have to spend any money to have it published. That I had figured that one out for myself, and he was so excited about it, and I walked away feeling good because I'd helped somebody, and it happens a lot now. People come up and ask me about how to write this and how to do this, and I've picked up some information along the way, and it feels good helping people. Sharing what you've learned and seeing them succeed.
Oh yeah, it feels great.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
You might consider doing little seminars or something near where you live.
Well, I don't know if I'm that good or not, but as far
and then who's to say what the limit is, right? I mean, you got to look at guys that are like I don't know, who was it? I don't know if it was Picasso. It was one of those great artists. He never wanted to sell any of his art, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't care if he was rich or famous from it. And then there's guys that it wasn't worth anything until they died. Right. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you might as well, if you know 25 to 50% more than the average Joe, you might as well help them out.
Yeah.
And what I find is when you train people, they're more apt to want to stick with it if they pay a little something for it because they perceive the value. If you give it away to them for free, they don't try to hold the information as much. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
But it's true.
Yeah, but it's true. Very true.
And it's like, here, it's free. It's probably not worth anything. It could be a free steak dinner. If it's a free steak dinner, they probably think it's artificial steak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about, let's go into it's kind of like a military life. Tell me a little bit more about the adventures of being a big security company owner and where that took you.
Oh, well, it was interesting. It all started out, I mentioned earlier, in the other interview that I had gone to work at the paper company and started a security patrol, or was going to start a security patrol by bringing a group of people in and having everybody share the cost in the neighborhood. And then I realized that you could do these alarms, and so we started doing the alarms, and it just started to it clicked, and I started the company, and all of a sudden I realized that if I really wanted this thing to work, I was going to have to quit this really nice job I had. God, it was a nice job. I could come and go as I pleased, and I was the head of security and also an industrial buyer, and I just really had the world by the ass. It was a great job, and to quit it was a very scary thing, but I did. I walked away from it, and people started coming to me and saying, I want you to do this and I want you to do that. I didn't even have to go out of the room. I had a telephone in the back of an office. A friend had a business, office business, and I was in the back of his store. And I had 3 people working for me. And by the end of the year, we had like 60 people working for us. And I had moved out of that into another building, and I was lucky enough to get a guy who was who retired from the Michigan State Police, and Steve came to work for me and as my general manager, and he's the one who gave all the licenses out in the state of Michigan for security companies. And so he knew
Beautiful.
He knew a lot of folks, and we took off there. We ended up building our own place. And then I started meeting people. People came out of the woodwork. I don't know what the hell happened or why it happened, but I had people calling me up from South America and all over and saying, we heard that you do this and you do that. And I said, well, who the hell told you that? Well, I can't tell you. And I had people calling me up and asking me how to buy. They wanted to arm a small group. And I said, I don't.
Oh,
I don't,
they wanted your Marine training.
I don't arm small groups, I was kind of weird. And then I met some guys in Special Forces, and they took me along, and I ended up meeting people in Russia and all over the world. And I met the guy that saved Yeltsin during the coup, the attempted coup, when the wall came down and everything. And I met these guys. I met guys that they took me to secret training camps in Russia where they had trained the KGB and so forth. He says, today they're not, we don't, they had faces on these. All these mannequins and stuff, He said, those used to be CIA agents. He said, now they're mafia. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So basically like the spy shop. Did you ever go to one of those little cities where they used to, because there's a big movie out right now, Red Sparrow.
Uh-huh.
And my wife's Russian, but, it doesn't, she was never a spy.
Yeah.
She was a baby when all that happened.
Right.
By the time she was like 4 or 5, communism was over. But still, she was there for the adjustment, right?
Right.
And, they used to have those spy camps where they teach you perfect American English and American mannerisms and body language and seduction and dead drops and all that kind of stuff.
I was there, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You were there. Pretty cool.
We went down this alley. One of them, we went down this alley, and it was like something out of a movie. I expected everything to turn into black and white, And they came out. These guys came out in trench coats and opened up these big metal gates and stuff, and opened it up, and we went in, and they closed them behind us and locked them. We went inside and met these guys that had done all the training. Or at least at one of the camps anyway. It wasn't the only one. But the gentleman that took me there, and we're still good friends today, was the head of security in Japan for many, many years. He's fluent in 8 languages. I have a friend who is Chinese, owned a restaurant in Battle Creek, and we went there, and I introduced her to Yuri. And Yuri spoke to her in Chinese, and her eyes got big, and she said, "Oh, John, he speaks better Chinese than I do." He's an incredible man. He's just a wonderful man, and he and his wife have been my friend for all these years, for many, many years. And I never would have met them if it wasn't for the company, for starting that business. And
well, did they have you working with Russian executives, or what did they have you doing?
We went over there to. We were interested in night vision equipment, and there was so much equipment that was being made available in the United States, and it was all new stuff. At that time, night vision and everything was kind of a new thing for everybody, and the Russians were selling their equipment. And we were there to see if we couldn't get in on that and to make purchases. It was funny.
Oh, that sounds like a scene. Sounds like a scene out of the Lord of War.
Yeah, well,
with Nick Cage.
When I would come back, because of some of the people that I met, when I would come back, I would be debriefed in my office by the FBI, and
I believe it.
They would come down. Well, one day they called me up and they said, "John, you've been to Russia?" And I said, "Yeah, I just got back." And they said, "Well, do you know anybody over there he said, I'm being sent over there because some of the people are selling things that shouldn't be sold. You know, we'd like to talk to them if we could. And he said, do you know anybody that sells any stuff like that? And I said, I have catalogs here for everything from swords to missiles. Would that be of interest to you? He red light and siren all the way to my office. He came in, he said, where did you get this stuff? He said, I can't believe it. I said, well, they came to me and asked me if I'd be interested in buying any of it. And he said, can I borrow it? And I said, well, of course you can take it with you. You know, it's for a good cause. And then one time we got stopped in Russia. They came to us. A fellow came out of at the hotel, and he says, "You're American?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Can I speak to you?" And I said, "Well, I suppose." Everybody was a little nervous, but he said, I was in North Vietnam, and I ran a missile there, you know, a SAM missile base. And he said, we shot down many American airplanes. He said, I kept all the tail numbers of all the planes that we shot down. He said, I would like to get that back to the United States. He said, I know some of these planes were never accounted for. And so he gave that to me, and I took it back and I sent it to the Pentagon. And they dealt with it from there, getting those numbers back. So it was,
I think you're sitting on the book right there, my friend.
Yeah. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of things that have happened that are wonderful stories that could be developed there. Yes.
Well, I understand a lot about that stuff. I don't know why, but I just do. You know, I was a little kid. What was I, like 17, 16, something? Not a little kid. A man boy.
Yeah.
Man boy.
Just ask me. Man boy.
Right, just ask me. We went to Berlin, I believe it was 85 or 86. And we went across the border, went through Checkpoint Charlie. This is before the wall came down. And they let us take a tour, and we saw their little tiny Ladas, but there was another car that was even smaller than the Lada, probably ran on kerosene. It was like a little nugget of a vehicle. Now it looks like the smart car, right? And, yeah, they were like, okay, we're doing exchange 1 for 1 because it was Stasi, not KGB. It was East Germany, right? But they're affiliated, they were under like Russian rule. And, we get to go to the mall and shop around. Well, the first thing I noticed was, because I was big into technology, like boom boxes, radios, stereos, and I worked in a TV station, so I knew technology pretty well. And I was looking at their radios and all this stuff, and I'm going, damn, that looks like some 1940s gear right there. Wooden radio, you know, with shortwave and stuff. You know what I mean? How many diodes does that have, right? You know, I'm like, I'm not buying one of these. So we're looking around, and we go to eat, and I think I spent 13 or 23 cents for, you know, veal cutlet, caviar, a glass of champagne, and some salad or something. Yeah, that's how cheap it was. And then we were like running around outside, me and my buddies, and we were supposed to stay with the group. Like, let's find some people and sell our jeans.
There you go.
Because jeans were worth like $200 on the black market, right? But, you know, we kind of thought twice. We're like, we're in this country. We're probably being watched. We'd watched spy movies, so we were just assuming everyone's spying, right?
Right.
But, you know, we took a little tour around there, and then we went back. And, you know, I swear Berlin was one of those places that had that James Bond or Jason Bourne kind of feel to it. It truly did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was going on back then. It was going on when I was a kid. That's where the CIA, the KGB, the Stasi, all those people were gaming on each other, right? Which you probably get some more insight from by meeting your friends, right?
Right. I have some interesting stories that we won't talk about.
I'm like, I'm tired of the FBI visits, right?
Yeah.
Just, well, you know, sometimes you run into something that it's really not classified, nor is it illegal, but it's like, it's intel that they want. because you get the cool guy pass that they didn't get, and they're trying to get it from all their tradecraft techniques, right?
Right.
So have you spent a lot of time in Russia, like weeks, months, days?
Weeks mostly. We also went to Estonia, which was an incredible place. It was like stepping back in time. It was the well out in front of where we were staying was built, I think, in the 1400s, and still worked. And interesting thing, we found these. There were all these shops there, antique shops, and I started going through, and there were some marvelous things to buy, but you had to be careful because they would take them away from you. You could buy them, but then they would confiscate them and say they were national treasures and take them away from you when you started to leave the country. And so I was looking. Well, I found this turtle made of bronze or brass, and it was huge, and it had the continents on its shell. And I thought, gee, that would be really cool in my office. And I got to thinking about it, and it was dark in there. So I thought, well, I'll take a picture of it. It's just too big. I can't carry the dang thing back on the airplane. And so I took a picture of it. And when we got back, I was showing everybody my photos. And we came to that turtle, and I hadn't really looked at the picture. And there it was, this beautiful turtle, and written along the side was made in China.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, when you were running, what was the last year your company had Blackwater come out by then?
Yes, Blackwater was out, and there were several other companies that were coming out. One company,
Executive Outcome.
Yeah.
Executive Outcome. I know one of those guys. He lives near me.
Well, we met some guys when we were in England. We went to England to do some training, and also ended up opening an office there in London. And my guy that was the head of our security detail, the executive protection, Ron Hunter, and I were in the place having our dinner, and this guy came in, and he was a big guy. He came in and he said, "You blokes are from the U.S., right?" And we said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'd like to talk to you if I can." He said, "I've got I'm starting a school, and he said, I'd like to talk to you," but he said, "Can I join you?" And I said, "Well, okay." Yeah. I said, it ended up, what he was trying to do is recruit us to go to Afghanistan and fight the Russians.
Oh, yeah, some proxy war. He has a roundabout way. He's kind of
he thought we were mercenaries, and he wanted us to go. And he was showing us pictures. He says, "Here I am with a couple of these guys, and they were in foxholes with rocket launchers." No, Jesus. And Ron says, "Where do these people come from?" He said, "I go out with you." And he said, "The strangest shit happens." The place where we were at the bridge. We were standing at the bridge taking pictures and everything. And when I think a day after we left, they blew the damn thing up. He says, "No," he said, "things must be getting better." He said, "Because normally we would have been there when that happened."
Well, I think you probably grew because you had a good reputation, you had a good base in the States, and then you take on another job, and that would up your reputation like a good Yelp review, and your company probably grew with it, and you kept adding more quality guys, right?
Yes.
Building a solid team.
We had very good people working for us. Yes.
So what was like, did you have like dignitaries, celebrities? I mean, what was some of the, not necessarily by name, but what kind of people did you work with on the higher end?
Mostly executive, and on occasion we were hired by other companies to, when they were short of people, they they would have people from the Middle East coming in, royalty or something of this type. They didn't have enough people to fill the bill, but we had such a reputation with them that they knew that they could trust us and that we did a good job. And so we would go in and work contract with them. And the other people never knew that we were contracted. They always thought we were always part of the group.
That's a pretty smart way to go. Now, I have a friend that does it now. I guess he's working for Apple or Google, but he used to be a police officer.
Uh-huh.
And then a dog, federal dog guy, all kinds of different things. But, he bounced around and he managed it and he was like, this is hell.
Oh, yeah.
And, you get 50 guards calling you, hey, I was wondering if I could call and say, hey, you know what? I haven't heard from anybody at my post. Hey, it's like,
yeah.
I have some insight as to what you've been through.
Yeah, well, people think it's
my buddy's hired and half. Go ahead.
Oh, people think it's a glory job, and it's not. It's a lot of hours of doing nothing, having to stay on your staying alert, because nothing may happen for years, but you have to be able to respond immediately, as if it was, every day you have to be on your toes to do it, because you never know when it's going to happen, and so often in that business, people turn around and they get upset because they don't think anything is going to happen. I don't need this. The company said they had to have it. Well, they get all upset and they give you a real bad time, and then they get in trouble. We had one guy that turned around and a guy came down to kill him. Matter of fact, he was a Marine, and he had come to for whatever reason, I can't remember why, but he was there to kill him, and he hired us to protect he and his family. Well, we came in and they arrested this guy and put him in jail, and he said, well, I won't need you anymore. And he said, we said, what do you mean? And he said, well, he's in jail. And he said, I called up the jail and they assured me that he wouldn't be getting out. And we said, you can't believe that. You can't possibly believe that. And he said, oh yeah. He said, they wouldn't tell me that. He said, no. He said, we won't do it. It wasn't an hour later. He called up and he said, my God, they put him out on bail. And we said, yeah, we tried to tell you. And we got him just in time. We got there just in time. And the guy had an M14 in his car, fully loaded, and he was there to do the job. He came back to finish it. He said, "I'll."
Wow.
Yeah. So it was hard to convince people that this stuff was real, and a lot of times, just because it didn't happen right away didn't mean it wasn't going to happen. A little bit later on. And so you always had to stay alert.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, hey, he's in jail. Have you ever heard of Johnny Cochran? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no, they wouldn't let him out.
That would have been my thing. Hey, you're out. Yeah, we're going to send him home on bail. You send him a limo. But that's pretty wild. I mean, I get to go to the Blackwater facility in San Diego. They changed the name of it just as like a week or two before I showed up there. And it was funny because I had this friend of mine who wanted me to do a video shoot of these models for his videos. So it was just me, a couple of hot gals, and my buddies, and we're all out there shooting guns, filming girls at the Blackwater range, right near the border of Mexico. Yeah.
Well,
it was.
I never.
It was pretty cool. I got a video.
I never met any of those guys. Never had an occasion to do that, but heard a lot of things about them and what they were doing. I met a few people that checked me out and to see whether or not we would do some things. Did you ever see the America's Most Wanted?
Yeah, I remember that show.
America's Most Wanted. Our guys were on there. They went to Cairo, Egypt, and brought a guy back.
Oh, that might have been a good bonus. Kind of like, remember Dog the Bounty Hunter went to Mexico to find that guy that was dosing all those girls?
They convinced him to come back on his own dime. So it's an interesting story, but not one I can talk about on this. But he came.
Maybe in your book one day.
Maybe one day it'll come back. But it was interesting. I still. I think I still have a video of it around someplace, the interview afterwards and so forth. But he was real surprised when he got out of the car smiling and they slapped the cuffs on him. You lied to me.
That's like how they would get guys that had jumped bail. You won the $10,000 prize at KSJR. Come on down. Big Mike will meet you. We'll get a check for you. Yeah, that's right. You named the right rock band. Come on down.
I used to love that shit. The look on their face.
A little bait and switch, eh? Well, it's funny. It's funny because like over a decade ago, I had a guy working with me. He was teaching combatives. I was helping him teach combatives and stuff to like police. And we were trying to get it approved. We were trying to get it approved by Post in California. And it was too violent for them. And because a lot of things had happened in the media where police had been too aggressive and so forth. And the last thing they wanted you doing was kicking a guy in the nuts and hit him, cutting his face open with your elbow and, taking him out by the neck and all that stuff. And they're like, right? So they graduated to tasers is what they did.
Yeah. Electrocute them.
So, so that was like a entertaining go nowhere idea. But anyways, all the video I made on the guy, he was Italian and he'd done some anti-terror work and been in charge of security for the bases right after 9/11 over the American bases in Italy. So, he'd be teaching Krav Maga, and Krav Maga is pretty effective. The Israelis use it. They use it a lot. It's a reactive, defensive martial art. It's not like you can Krav at somebody. It's not like, boxing or karate or something, see a lot of that stuff in the Jason Bourne movies, but my Russian friends seem to believe it doesn't work. They're like, maybe for little man does not work in Russia. They kill you. There's some hardy, tough. Russians are tough guys, man. Total respect for their physical abilities. They're very tough because tough is just a way of life there, Yeah. Very, and
they're ingenious.
Aggro.
They're ingenious on how to get things fixed. We'll spend thousands of dollars on fixing something, and they take duct tape and fly off into the sunset. We're still trying to figure it out.
The motor's cracked. The engine block is cracked. Wrap 10 things of duct tape around it. There we go. Now it's not cracked anymore.
It works fine. Yes. Marvelous guy.
I could see that. So are you working on another book right now?
Yes, I'm working on the prequel. After writing The House of Crow, a lot of people kept bugging me about, they said, well, we want to know more about White Crow. You just kind of glossed over that in the first book. And so that's what I'm writing is about the young man who was found by the Indians and adopted by them, and how he went off to California and raised his son there, and how that all came together, and why the family is a family of warriors to give no quarter.
Sounds like a good book, and people want to know what happens next anyways. I mean, this is what happens next. This is a sequel society. People like to watch a whole series. Right. They like to read a whole series of books. Harry Potter's making a record to that, so I'm sure that'll be good. But I would tell you not to leave out all your, security and spy stories, even if you have to change the names to protect people. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I've used a lot of the information I have from those things I put into the book, already in the House of Crow, and the security things and the details and so forth. So those are things that I've fed in at a different at a different time in history, but it's worked out well, and it's been a lot of fun to people that I knew. Some of them are gone now and stuff, but to remember them and to put their life in the story, And,
well, in your research, you could call up your Russian buddy and get, kind of do timelines, like your timeline, his timeline, leading back and forth.
Yeah.
I don't know. I see it. I see it all in my head. I see your story, buddy. Because that's an interesting time, and people like stuff. What really happened that wasn't in the news, that's a story that's got value.
Yeah.
And it's like, here I am. Hey, I'm doing security at this paper company. But, the book starts, so there we were walking into the spy factory and blah, blah, blah. But 5 years ago, I was just a guy working at a paper factory.
Exactly.
It's kind of a cool way to bring it back and forth. Just a style. But no, this, so you want to do podcasts like I suggested to you?
Yes.
You want to talk to other authors, any kind of authors that you're interested in?
I think anyone who has a new book out, and because getting your information out is so difficult within this thing. People agonize over how do I get people to know about my book, and there are people already that are doing podcasts and interviewing authors and so forth. I want to put a lot of work into it, research into it and find out how to do it correctly so that I can get it out there to the right people so that people can hear about these books, do good interviews for these people, and give them the opportunity to sell their books, because there's a lot of good books being written, and a lot of people, publishers and are not picking them up for whatever reason. It's a crazy thing how this thing goes.
Well, you got to understand publishing. I would recommend you learn publishing, right? I mean, I listened to a podcast the other day about a songwriter, and he's made more money than some of the bands he wrote songs for because he owns a piece of the publishing, So all their songs, he's making a bigger rip. They get the big upfront money, but he gets the forever money. Every time that song's played on a commercial or played for, TV or the national anthem, whatever,
right.
You know what I mean? He gets paid. And I was like, wow, that's the way to do it. Oh, you're the rock band. Well, you're gone. I wrote the song. You jumped up and down and played the music, but here we are, right? So I guess there's something to learn, but I think by doing that, you might learn some new secrets and new techniques, and so will they. I think it would be pretty cool.
Yes, I think it would be beneficial to a lot of people and also to me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's also good to have a good conversation. So you have some people kind of in mind already, some other authors lined up?
There's I've met a lot of people out there already. Just within our own publishing group, there's over 100, I think there's 150 now, and there's 30 of them that are bestsellers. So
there you go.
So there's great opportunity out there, and a lot of people to interview, available to interview. I think that would like to be.
Oh, totally. Well, I think where can people find your book?
Amazon.com, The House of Crow, and John W. Wood author. And it's pretty easy to.
And you got a new one coming out.
I hope to have it about another 2 months or so.
Well, and with that said, I hope everybody's enjoyed the podcast. John's a pretty amazing guy. And now you know where to find his book. And also subscribe to us on AEC Stories at podbean.com or iTunes or Stitcher. We're out there, or like us on Facebook. And thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure to meet you, and thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.